In Mexico, the second cycle of peace talks between the Colombian government and the National Liberation Army came to a close. Tensions over Friends of Popular pension reform are on the rise on Fridays due to President Emmanuel Macron's refusal to meet with trade unions. First humanitarian aid plane sent by the European Union arrives in the city of Goma in the Democratic Republic of the Congo as fighting between M23 and the government forces increase. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll be with the news. Stay with us. In Mexico, the second cyclone of peace talks between the Colombian government and the National Liberation Army, ELN, came to a close. The peace delegation of both parties are participating in the event together with the Colombian Vice President Francia Márquez and the Mexican Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard. During his opening speech, Ebrard graded the parties and affirmed that it is an honor for his country to collaborate with the construction of peace in Colombia. Likewise, the chief negotiator of the ELN, Pablo Beltrán, showed his gratitude to the government of Cuba for accepting to host the third cycle of peace talks.
For us, it is a pleasure, a privilege, to be able to contribute, to do our bit so that peace can be built in the great fatherland, in Colombia. Because in the end, we are brotherly peoples, and if it is successful, because they are succeeding in building peace, it means that we can build peace everywhere. And if it is successful in recognizing the others and respecting each other, in understanding each other, then imagine the future that awaits us. Freedom, rights, common causes, that is what this dialogue is all about.
The head of peace delegation of the National Liberation Army, ELN, Pablo Beltrán, indicate that in the second round of peace talks with the government of Colombia, our agenda was established, which includes the participation of Colombian civil society in the construction of peace.
The new agenda of conversations that we have signed here, that we have named the Mexico Agreement, in which we call on all of Colombia to participate in the construction of a common vision of peace beyond that which the two parties at this table may have, with the purpose of serving as the foundation of a political and social alliance that will structure a national agreement for the transformation that our country needs and lead the unstoppable transition that will allow us to turn the page of the tragic night of structural violence. In this way, a great objective will have a great force that will propel it in a sustained route of changes in the short, medium, and long term.
Beltrán then announced that in this cyclone of dialogues in Mexico, the ELN and the government of Colombia took the first steps to establish a bilateral ceasefire.
We began to develop the first point referred to the participation of society in the construction of peace. Likewise, we took the first steps to concretize the national and temporary bilateral ceasefire that will create better conditions for the mobilization and participation of Colombians in the peace process. Only peace is viable for a country. To achieve it is responsibility of all Colombians. From the international community, we hope and appreciate your support. We especially value your accompaniment in this national effort to develop a political solution to the conflict.
The head of the delegation of the government of Colombia, Oti Patiño, highlighted during the day the commitment of the delegation to reach a national peace agreement based on three fundamental pillars. So let's hear them.
Our commitment is directed to build a great national agreement that is a result of the will of the Colombian people and of the totality of the social political actors through three fundamental pillars: citizen participation, real democracy, and social-economic transformations.
Oti Patiño informed that he delivered to the Vice President of Colombia, Francia Márquez, a joint plan with the ELN to make effective the humanitarian relief.
To our Vice President, to her who is a part of us women who use motherly love to take care of their territories as a living space, we have delivered, together with the Army of National Liberation, a report and recommendations of a plan for the attention to humanitarian assistance that we seek to implement as soon as possible.
And in Ecuador, authorities report that more than 80,000 people have been affected by the heavy rains in the province of Manabí in recent days. This information was given by the Manabí civil governor, Leonardo Orlando, who points out that the floods and mudslides have caused 3 deaths and losses of around $80 million in a productive sector after leaving 2,800 hectares underwater. He also points out that the meteorological services are forecasting a new period of heavy rains, thunderstorms, and temperature gaunts of winds that will last throughout the first half of this month. According to the Secretary of the Risk Management, SGR, the city got around 18 million cubic meters of water. This is all thought to fill 7,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. In Argentina, the capital, Buenos Aires, and the Buenos Aires metropolitan area remain on red alert due to the extreme heat wave. According to the National Meteorological Office, temperatures of these cities will be between 36 and 39 degrees Celsius, while other cities in the central and eastern parts of the country will experience a day of subdued heat. The authorities are warning that high temperatures could affect the health of citizens and are recommending them to drink plenty of fluids, avoiding alcoholic drinks, and protect themselves from the sun. According to the SMN, which have been collecting data since 1961, this is the hottest summer since the beginning of record data, and last month was the second driest February on record, with 41.9% less rain than average. Let's take a very short break now, but remember, you can now follow us on our TikTok account, teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. Tensions over Friends of Popular Pension Reform were on the rise on Friday due to President Emmanuel Macron's refusal on an urgent meeting with the trade unions and a new government initiative to limit the debate in Parliament. According to opinion polls, 2 out of 3 French people oppose plans to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64 by 2030. They also refuses to bring forward to 2027 the requirement to pay the contribution for 43 years instead of 42 as the present in order to receive a full pension. The rejection was in mass protests since January the 19th, but they did not succeed in getting the bill withdrawn.
If the movement were to continue and expand on the other platforms, and we appeal to our colleagues at the other refineries, oil depots, steam crackers, inevitably the fuel shortage will be felt quickly. There is a feeling of contempt and anger and exasperation at this indifference, and this contempt once again in the direction of the world of labor. So this can only exacerbate the anger which will inevitably result either in a social explosion in the country through mobilization or in revenge tomorrow at the ballot box, for which Emmanuel Macron will have to take full responsibility.
On Friday, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and French President Emmanuel Macron agreed on a new pact to stop illegal cross-channel migration after a summit in Paris aimed at overcoming years of Brexit tensions. Both leaders hailed a new start in relations between the two neighbors after intensive talks in Paris, which were also marked by the impressions of unity in their support for Ukraine in fighting the Russian special military operation. It was the first UK-French summit in 5 years after Summit became premiered in October following the storming of Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, marked by the rancious relations with Paris. In France, the company responsible for managing the national nuclear power plants, EDF, reported on Friday the discovery of a new crack in two reactors. After intensifying control to deal with a possible nuclear safety problem, EDF announced the presence of a thermal fatigue crack in the emergency pipeline of two reactors, in addition to the particularly deep crack detected 3 days ago in the shutdown sector of Saint-Marin, north of Paris. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused foreign countries of fomenting days of mass protests in area, linking them to an attempted coup designed to sow tensions on Russia's border.
It is very similar to the Maidan in Kyiv. There is no doubt that the law on the registration of non-governmental organizations that receive foreign funding to the amount of only 20% of their budget was used as an excuse to start, generally speaking, an attempt to change the government by force. These events in Georgia are, of course, being orchestrated from abroad and with the aim of creating an irritant on the borders of Russia.
In China, President Xi Jinping took to a public oath of allegiances to the constitution after being elected for a third term in office. Speaking before the Chinese Congress, President Xi reiterated his determination to revitalize the country's economy. He also made a call for national unity to face the challenges posed by the Western powers. The 69-year-old leader reiterated his legal commitment and loyalty to the security and welfare of the Chinese people. Friday, China accused Canada of smearing its reputation over allegations that Asian Yayan is secretly operating two overseas police stations in Quebec.
China has been sticking to the principle of non-interference in other countries' internal affairs, strictly abiding by international law and respecting all countries' judicial sovereignty. We hope the relevant party will stop sensationalizing and hyping the matter and stop attacks and smears on China.
Likewise, Ma'anin slammed the United States of imposing sanctions on a group of Chinese companies that it said supplies Iran with parts of military drones used by Russia in its special military operation in Ukraine.
The unilateral sanctions by the U.S. violate international law and the basic order governing international relations. China is firmly opposed to that. We will continue to resolutely defend Chinese companies' legitimate rights and interests in accordance with the law. China always pursued an independent foreign policy of peace, and we will continue to view and develop China-U.S. relations in accordance with the principles of peaceful coexistence, mutual respect, and win-win cooperation. We hope the U.S. side can also meet us halfway and push China-U.S. relations back on track of sound and stable development.
teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and join our American alternative broadcast. One financial break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. A European emergency aid plane arrives in Goma, Democratic Republic of the Congo, as a fighting broke out between M23 militant and the government troops. It is the first of a series of air drops announced by the European Union. The aid mission is the first of an airlift announced last Saturday by the European Union to help the Belgrade city. The city of more than 1 million people is increasingly under threat from M23 rebels. They have captured the sentence of North Kivu province since they emerged from their asylum in late 2021. After a day of relative calm, fighting erupted early on Friday near the village of Rambil, less than 30 kilometers west of Goma, local authorities said. Goma has the Rwanda border to the east and Lake Kivu on the south. The M23 controls much of the north territory of the city and is now also encroaching from the west.
It is very important that we can enlighten the world to what is happening and to these movements of displaced people. We were talking about this earlier with the governor. There are more than 600,000 displaced people here in the city of Goma. Out of 1 million inhabitants, there are 600,000 displaced people who are here, welcoming Goma and its surroundings.
We want to bear witness in the face of a situation which is intolerable, which is not acceptable. What is happening here in eastern Congo is unacceptable. What is happening in eastern Congo must be brought to light. This is the reason for our presence here. This is the reason for this humanitarian airdrop. This is the reason for our diplomatic and political investment that accompanies this humanitarian bridge.
The ruling junta in Mali announced on Friday that it will postpone the constitutional referendum for March the 19th, while assuring that it will respect its commitments to return civilians to the home of the countries in 2024. Government spokesman Colonel Abdulhahan Maiga said in a statement read to the press that the date on the referendum will be postponed from March 19, 2023. The referendum is the first step supposed to be validated by the vote on the way to elections in February 2024 and the return to the civilian rule. The junta justifies these postponements by the installation of the representations of the election management body in all regions of the country and by the desire to popularize the draft new constitution.
The reasons for the postponement are very simple. We are permanently obliged to seek a balance between two principles which, without being in opposition, can sometimes be difficult to reconcile. On the one hand, we have the search for consensus and inclusiveness, which are very important to the head of state. And on the other side, we have the timetable. The reasons for the postponement are
with the Syrian people and ratifies his country's support for Syria after the earthquake of the February the 6th. From Damascus, our correspondent Hisham Wunus with the details.
The Iranian minister said his country will support Syria in the four-party meetings between Damascus, Tehran, Moscow and Ankara to normalize relations between Syria and its Turkish neighbor. President Bashar al-Assad thanked the Iranian position and pointed out that the interests of the Syrian people are at the core of any political step taken by his government in this context.
We believe that bilateral talks and dialogues in the region are the only solution to the crisis, so we welcome the upcoming four-party meetings in Moscow that look for greater cooperation and in a way out of this crisis. My country has full confidence in the Syrian decisions and will support them in those meetings.
The positions of Syria and Iran on regional and international issues are identical. The statement was made by the foreign ministers of the two countries in a joint press conference in Damascus, where they demanded the lifting of the unjust sanctions imposed on the Syrian people and an end to the foreign occupation of parts of Syrian soil. The ministers also called for the provision of humanitarian aid, far from any politicization, condemned the repeated Israeli aggressions against the Arab country, and rejected the Israeli Judaization plan as represented by the installation of wind turbines in the occupied Syrian Golan, as well as all the Israeli occupation crimes against the Palestinians.
We appreciate that the Islamic Republic of Iran was one of the first countries to contribute to the search and rescue operations and to send relief aircraft to Syria after the earthquake, and we ratify that the coordination between our two countries continues at the highest level. We agree that it is not possible to achieve stability in the region with the presence of foreign occupation forces.
The Iranian foreign minister arrived in Damascus from the earthquake-hit Syrian coastal province of Latakia. The visit comes just days after a similar visit to the Syrian capital and quake-hit areas by a delegation from the Iranian parliament. Two acts that materialize the continued support offered by Tehran to the Syrian people and government, both to overcome the effects of the war and the blockade, as well as to cope with the impact of the earthquake.
So we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm from the South. I'm Ana Marrero, and thank you for watching.